Hi, third grade. So we're going to get started with our social studies lesson today. This is not an easy lesson. There's a lot to read and look at, and we have to really be careful. If we were at school, we would be doing this lesson together, and we would be working with a partner, and I would be leading the discussion and helping you through this. So it's okay if you need to get help at home too. You can do this with someone. So it's really just a practice on how to read a map. So we just want to learn some things about reading maps. So we're going to go in our social studies hardcover book to page 220. And it says compare history maps. And when you look over at page 221, you'll see two maps. They are both of the United States, but they are very different. Look at the title of the top map. It says United States in 1803. And the bottom one says the United States in 1903. That's 100 years later. So you know that there were other countries coming in and claiming land in America. They thought that they could just come in and take over the land from the Native American people and claim it as theirs. Some of the countries that did that were France, England, Spain, the Netherlands. So this was happening with a lot of countries. So let's take a look. It's always important to look at the map key. When we look at this map key, we see lots of different colors, and each of those colors means something. The green says this is the United States back in 1803. We weren't a very big country yet, were we? British lands were up here in Canada. French, so we had fought a Revolutionary War, and we had won our independence or freedom from Great Britain. So the king no longer ruled, the king or queen, no longer ruled this, we were our own free, independent nation. But England still ruled up here. The French lands were here, and they were owned and ruled by France, way across the ocean, but they would send people over, and they would have governors and send people over to make sure that they were in charge of that land. And it ran along the Mississippi River, which was really important. There's a lot of fur trading at this time. And then we have Spanish lands. Spain, we know, came in, and they brought the Spanish language with them. And Spain controlled all of this land and over into Florida. There's this little piece of land here that France had that kind of interrupted the Spanish lands. And again, it flows along the side of the Mississippi River, which is a natural border. Now, down here we have Mexico. This is the Mexico, this was all considered Mexico at one time. Now we know that this is Texas down here, and we've got California along here. And down here we still have Mexico. But some wars were fought, and some land was also purchased from different countries, so that by 100 years later, in 1903, most of the United States was an independent country. And so we see this is all United States, but these are called territories. Arizona, New Mexico, and Oklahoma territories. So they're part of the United States, but they haven't gotten statehood yet. And you'll learn more about how that happens. But we're going to focus on looking at these maps and answering some questions. And why does it matter? On page 220, why it matters. Comparing maps that show the same area at different times help you see how the area has changed. It also helps you see what has stayed the same. Now, these are political maps. They're showing the countries that claimed the land. Learn. A history map shows what a place looked like at an earlier time The maps on page 221 show the United States at two different times. The first shows the United States just before the Louisiana Purchase, just before we bought all this land from King Louis of France, King Louis. And it was named for the King of France, Louisiana. And we know now today there's a state named Louisiana, but all that other territory is part of other states. And that happened in 1803. The other map shows 100 years later, 1903. Look at the map keys to see what each color, line, and label shows. Then use the maps to answer these questions. Let's practice. What river marked the western border of the United States before the Louisiana Purchase? So we have to, it's like, oh, I don't know, how am I going to find that? Well, this is before the Louisiana Purchase. And if we look for a river that's bordering something, let's see, I don't see here, the Mississippi River. It starts way up in Minnesota, where I'm from. There's a glacier lake there that the glacier melted and it feeds the lake. And the lake spills over and forms the Mississippi River, and other rivers or tributaries join, and the river gets really big as it's going down south and eventually empties into the Gulf of Mexico. Number 2, how many more states did the United States have in 1903 than it had in 1803? So we have to count our states. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 19, that's a territory. 18, that's a territory. 17, that's a territory. I have to take those off. I think there's about 17. There's the 13 original colonies, and North Carolina was one of them. And then they added on Ohio, Kentucky, and Tennessee. Ohio, Kentucky, Tennessee, that would make 16. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. Maine was part of Massachusetts at this time. And then we count up all of these states and we would do a subtraction problem. But we're not going to worry about that right now because I want to go to our workbook. So in our workbook, we're going to open to page 2 or page 60, where we see 2 United States maps. And again, it's important to read the titles. United States in 1820, United States in 1870, 50 years later. So this is the United States by 1820. You can see now that there's more states. There's still a territory, and there's all of these territories. And this is called Oregon country. It's not even a territory. It was just this wild wilderness woods that they had claimed the land, but they hadn't organized it into a territory, and it had not become a state yet. Down here we see all of the United States are states now. Oh, well, not quite. Look at our key. The United States, that's all the white. This belongs to the United States too, but they're not organized into states. They're called territories. Do you see that? Territories. And there's like Colorado Territory, South Dakota Territory, New Mexico Territory. Over here, unorganized territory. What did that become? If I look back at the map in my book, it says Oklahoma Territory. It became Oklahoma Territory in 1903, so that's much later yet. But That was unorganized territory. They didn't call it Oklahoma yet. And that's an Indian name from the Native American people who lived here. Many of our states are named for Native American Indian people, including Minnesota. That means cloudy water. So we're going to go to page 61 and read the questions carefully. Which three states in 1870 had been part of the Michigan Territory in 1820? I'm going to find the Michigan Territory in my 1820 map. I know Michigan is up here near where Minnesota is in the Great Lakes, so I'm going to look for it. Michigan Territory, right here. If I compare that with down here, do you see this part? It's called the Arrowhead. That's part of Minnesota, so that's one of the states. So we're going to write Minnesota, or we can abbreviate capital M, capital N for Minnesota. But not the whole state of Minnesota. Over here, what's this? That we see Lake Michigan and Lake Huron kind of surrounding this part of Michigan Territory. And that's right here. That became Michigan, the state of Michigan, capital M, capital I. And then there's a little bit over here by Lake Michigan, on the other side of Lake Michigan, that is part of Wisconsin, where we get a lot of cheese and milk products from Wisconsin. They call it Dairyland, capital W, capital I. So we found all three of those. Let's take a look now at number 2. What places were unorganized territories in 1820 but were states in 1870? So let's find the first part. Unorganized territory in 1820. My top map is my 1820. Oh my. I see Oregon country, claimed by Spain, so this is Spanish land. Arkansas territory, unorganized territory, there it is. So now I have to look down here and compare. I'm going to look at that question again. What places were unorganized territories in 1820 but were states in 1870? So if we look in this area, and then we look down here and we can see which were states. And we might think, North Dakota, South Dakota. No, those are not states, those are territories. We're only looking for states in this area. So none of this is states, but what about Nebraska? Capital N, capital E, I think. Right below that is Kansas. Capital K, capital A. And let's see, what else? Right below Minnesota, here's Minnesota, and right above Missouri and below Minnesota, what comes right in between? Iowa, capital I, capital A, Iowa. Number 3, how many unorganized territories were there in 1870? We're going to look at the 1870 map, and we're going to look at the territories. So that's just this gray, and if you look, you'll find some are named Wyoming Territory, North Dakota Territory, but there's some that might be named unorganized territory. Look for anything that says unorganized territory and count and write the number for number 3. Number 4, what country had claimed the Arizona Territory in 1820? Up here at 1820, Arizona Territory. Well, here is Arizona Territory. Who owned it up here in 1820? Look to see who owned it or claimed it. Number 5, which 3 states were Spanish land in 1820 and became states in 1870? Spanish lands in 1820. So this is all Spanish lands. And 3 of those places became states. So we're looking at this whole area that goes like this, all the way across. But remember, we're only looking for states. There are 3 of them. So in this area, what are the 3 states? They're the white instead of the gray. Look carefully. Let's see, number 6, how many total territories were there in 1870? We're going to look at this map and we're going to look closely. We know territories are the gray. Okay. We want all the territories, whether they were unorganized or organized territories, all of them. Number 7, was Florida a state in 1820? Look at the 1820 map. Let's look over here. It's got that gray. Read the key. What does it tell you? Was it a state? Yes. Or was it a state? No. That's a yes or no answer. Number 8, how many organized territories were there in 1870? So now we're down here at 1870, and we're going to look for organized U.S. territories. So don't include anything that's unorganized. Again, the territories are this gray. And they're all over here because these were the states, and pioneers were settling this way, going west. So from here on out, look for the gray ones, count them, but do not include any unorganized territory. Number 9, which map shows Washington as a part of Oregon country? Now we're talking about the state of Washington, way over on the Pacific coast, on the east or the west side of the United States. So if we look for Oregon country, let's see, Oregon country is here. And it says, which map shows Washington as a part of Oregon country? Here's Oregon country again. Which one is showing it as part of Oregon country? Not a territory. Number 10, which map shows Iowa as part of a territory? Now remember I said Minnesota, we've got Minnesota here, and Iowa is right below Minnesota. So here it says it's a U.S. state. What territory was it a part of? Here's Minnesota right here, and right up above Missouri is Iowa. What territory, or what map shows it as part of a territory? So number 9 and number 10, you can say the 1820 map or the 1870 map, or you could say the top map or the bottom map. Okay, work carefully on this.